movies. So we are willing to consider that. We will discuss that with the trade. Thank you.
二項質詢。
Question 2, Mr. Duncan CHIU. President, in recent years, many countries around the world have successfully enacted legislation to prohibit or restrict adolescents from using social media, and their views that the government should consider introducing similar measures. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, whether it will conduct a comprehensive assessment of the feasibility of enacting legislation to prohibit adolescents from using social media and the potential impact of such legislation on adolescents, the local internet industry, the digital economy, and the social media ecosystem, if so, the details. 2, whether it has studied how to make use of technologies, including age verification technologies, real name authentication, etc., to effectively prevent minors from accessing undesirable content on social media on the premise of not hindering the normal operation of the industry. If so, the findings of the study and whether it will consult the innovation and technology sector on the feasibility of the relevant technological solutions. And 3, as overseas experience reportedly indicates that blanket bans may lead adolescents to turn to alternative media that are difficult to regulate, whether the government has studied an age-based or tiered regulatory model for social media that suits Hong Kong's social environment, for example, opening functions by age groups, restrictions, use during specified periods, etc., so as to reduce the negative impact of social media on adolescents. If so, of the details. Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry. President, the government attaches great importance to the impact of social media on physical and mental health of adolescents. Relevant policy bureaus have been closely monitoring the latest developments and are working to mitigate the impact of social media use on adolescents' health through public education and issuance of relevant guidelines. In response to the question raised by Mr. Duncan CHIU, upon consulting the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau, the Education Bureau, and the Health Bureau, our reply are as follows. When considering measures that may involve restricting Internet use or the content therein, the government must take into account various relevant factors, such as the impact on the psychological and social development of adolescents, the impact on the local innovation and technology ecosystem and related industries, public expectations on freedom of speech and information, and the overall level of acceptance by the society. In particular, any measures involving an outright ban or restriction must take into account the feasibility of actual enforcement and oversight. International experience reveals that even when legislation on online safety for children and adolescents is enacted, achieving effectiveness and striking the right balance in practice remains challenging. Examples include how to accurately verify users' ages, feasibility of enforcement across platforms and borders, and whether such measures would excessively restrict social media platforms from entering and expanding in the Hong Kong market, thereby affecting the overall development of the local innovation and technology and digital ecosystem. The above issues must be subject to in-depth public discussion and a clear consensus must be reached before the government has a sufficient basis to formulate more specific measures to prohibit or restrict adolescents from using social media. At this stage, the government has no plan to pursue legislation on this matter. But we can provide guidelines on the use of social media, and we remain with an open attitude. The use of social media on one hand may provide more opportunities for learning and socializing for adolescents, while on the other hand, it may also pose risks related to safety, crime, and health for them. We noted that some social media platforms have gradually introduced content filtering for underage users in Hong Kong. These platforms use artificial intelligence technology to detect users who may be under a specified age, thereby restricting their access to certain types of content or features and prompting parents or guardians to activate the relevant protective settings. EDB places great emphasis on fostering students' information literacy and have launched the Information Literacy for Hong Kong Students Learning Framework, which systematically covers topics such as the safe and responsible use of the internet and social media, evaluating information, protecting personal data privacy, and preventing cyberbullying across different learning stages from primary to secondary school. This framework aims to cultivate students' critical thinking skills and their ability to use the internet in an ethical and healthy manner. In addition, EDB published a curriculum framework for parent education. We're promoting the healthy, happy, and balanced development of children and adolescents including facilitating healthy use of the internet, is one of the key areas. EDB also encourages parents through various channels, including seminars and information platforms, to establish reasonable rules regarding social media and screen time based on their children's ages and developmental needs, and to work in conjunction with school policies to jointly mitigate related risks. In the area of health, the Department of Health issued updated health recommendations for children and adolescents in 2018 based on the report of an advisory group on health effects of use of internet and electronic screen products. In addition, the 2025 policy address pointed out that DH will update relevant guidelines to mitigate the impact of social media use on the health of children and adolescents. The Interdepartmental Advisory Group on Health Effects of Screen and Social Media Use for Children and Adolescents was also established in October 2025. Its members include representatives from DH, EDB, the Social Welfare Department, the Digital Policy Office, as well as academics and non-governmental organizations. The advisory group is tasked with reviewing the latest medical and scientific evidence, relevant developments, and experiences in other countries and regions, and synthesizing the views of experts and stakeholders. It will issue updated health recommendations regarding the use of electronic screens and social media by children and adolescents within 2026. Regarding the regulation of obscene or indecent content on the internet, given the vast volume and rapidly changing nature of online information, the Office for Film, Newspaper, and Article Administration, the OFNAA, has been working with the industry to jointly regulate and handle complaints regarding the online publication of obscene or indecent materials, and also proactively monitors content on online platforms. If content deemed obscene or indecent is discovered, OFNAA will require the relevant platform to add a warning message or to delete, block, or completely obscure the concerned content. In addition, OFNAA actively promotes a wide range of public education and awareness campaigns, collaborating with various stakeholders to enhance public awareness, particularly among children and adolescents, of the Control of Obscene and Indecent Articles Ordinance, encouraging them to stay away from harmful information and foster a proper understanding of healthy internet use. The government will continue to closely monitor the latest overseas practices and implementation experiences regarding the regulation of social media use by adolescents and keep under review the relevant guidelines and measures in Hong Kong in a timely manner and adjusting them as necessary, taking into account the actual circumstances of Hong Kong. There are 19 members who have indicated their wish to speak. Please be succinct. Mr. Duncan CHIU. I am a bit disappointed that the government stated there is no plan to pursue legislation at this stage. I have actually talked to some of the social media platforms and internet operators, and many of them actually are not objecting to guidelines being issued. In the past 10 odd years, we have seen enactment of legislation in other places. In Australia, it's almost the strictest, but it also faces problems in execution. On the mainland, there is actually a tripartite cooperation. There is actually a time limit on the use of screen time, and then on the downloading of video games and the browsing of internet, there's also a regulation so that we can reduce screen time of adolescents. We see that there's actually a decrease of 70 to 80% screen time of adolescents on the mainland since this was regulated. I hope that the Secretary can continue to work on more guidelines and in future really think about pursuing legislation. Secretary, thank you for your follow-up. I said that the government has no plan to pursue legislation on this matter at this stage, but it doesn't mean that we do not set up some measures on social media platforms. We are quite open-minded in what can be done to reduce screen time. We see that there are some regulations overseas. The tripartite joint action on the mainland is actually approved by the State Council to actually set up guidelines for underage users. Operators would be operated within the ecosystem. As the social media platforms in Hong Kong are not mainly local, we will have to rely on those countries to regulate it. So many of the platforms operated by the mainland have been regulated. However, many countries, including Europe and Australia, are already looking into more regulation. In the UK, we see a lot of work has been done on platform regulation, and they have also adopted certain measures. I believe that this is actually consistent with what we are doing in Hong Kong. We can draw reference from regulation on the mainland and the UK. We can also adopt different measures, such as working together with parents. Now, this is actually introduced by France. The government is actively working on this. In the short term, we have already set up the advisory group on health effects of screen and social media use for children and adolescents. And we have already updated health recommendations for children and adolescents based on report of advisory group on health effects of use of internet and electronic screen products. We continue to promote safety in use of social media platforms. And parents would also need to look into the balanced development of children and adolescents. We continue to communicate with local social media platforms and to add in protective measures for underage users. For example, to try to regulate the content on the internet and to look into a reduction of screen time. This is something that the government is working on, and we would strengthen it in the future. We are aligned with the mainland and the UK. Hong Kong as a highly developed technology city, of course, must consider how we can better support our adolescents. But I have made it clear in my reply that the government attaches great importance to the impact of social media on physical and mental health of adolescents. Thank you. Ms. Kwok Foo-yong. In the reply, we see that many countries have enacted legislation on the use of social media on adolescents. Actually, education is very important. The European Union has already introduced a system in filtering and verifying age in users. I want to ask the Secretary, have you actually drawn reference from this, and in future, would you actually consider doing something like this instead of just relying on I Am Smart and try to use I Am Smart to verify users' ages? Secretary, actually, there are 90 members who wish to ask questions. Please be succinct. Well, as these questions are very important, I need to give comprehensive responses. I'm sorry, because I cannot reply in just one or two sentences. Ms. Kwok's question is very important. You mentioned I Am Smart. I Am Smart is actually not to be used to verify users' ages. Many government departments require identification, and therefore I Am Smart is actually widely used in Hong Kong for verification. That is not a problem. I just want to say that there are too many social media platforms nowadays, with many of them being abroad. All platforms should actually introduce measures to help underage users, but then it's actually quite difficult. I said that the UK and Australia have introduced measures, but they have found implementation very difficult. How can we accurately verify users' ages is not something easy. We are still exploring it at the moment. I cannot give you a concrete answer at the moment, but we will continue to monitor the progress. Thank you. Ms. Maggie Chen. Thank you, President. In 2024, I suggested a study on the regulation of obscene or indecent content. The government seems to be very passive all along. Currently, many places are trying to draw legislation to restrict adolescents from using social media. Would the government, on the premise of protecting children, introduce AI deep fake regulation to plug any loopholes that may appear? Secretary, I have already listed out the measures adopted by the government at the moment. These measures are actually highly consistent with those being taken on the mainland, the UK, and other European countries. We need to consider the feasibility of legislation. The government has been working with the EDB and DH and other departments in enhancing our work. Deepfake is a problem encountered with the development in AI. We hope to detect and cyber security issues. Well, we have seen that we have requested the removal of many obscene or indecent content on the internet in the past couple of years, and we will continue to, through education, enhancing regulation, cross-boundary collaboration, try to reduce the impact of deepfake AI, to try to raise awareness in the public and to come up with more measures to fight deepfake. Mr. Hon Duncan CHIU, President, in the last term, I have already raised this issue, hoping that there could be a reduction in screen time on children and adolescents. Well, it seems from the reply by the Secretary that we need to consider regulation and legislation. Perhaps we can also come up with a public campaign to raise awareness in the general public that work is being done in reducing use of social media platforms of adolescents. Well, you have to make it widely known so that it could become effective. Would you consider this? Secretary, thank you, Mr. CHIU, for your question. We have considered this. In my response, I said that our group will, in 2026, issue updated health recommendations regarding the use of electronic screens and social media by children and adolescents. With AI rapidly developing, we do have to raise awareness in the public on the use of AI, and we have to ensure that there will not be a health impact on adolescents and the use of social media. We want to ensure cyber safety to encourage the public to try to protect children and adolescents, and that parents should establish rules based on their children's ages. The current obstacle we face is that the majority of the social media platforms are not local platforms, so there is not much we can do. There must be cross-boundary cooperation. The UK and US and Hong Kong all have the same consensus that work has to be done to try to ensure that there is no health impact on adolescents. Mr. Jonathan Leung. Well, we have discussed for years whether we should regulate adolescents' use of social media. I want to ask about outside of our school curriculum, how can we ensure that they can safely and responsibly use the internet and that there is safety and security online? Well, actually, this question should be answered by the Secretary for CMAB. Well, people now use AI. They should know more about AI and to know what AI can do for them. We must emphasize on regulation. Departments have worked together to introduce guidelines, and some guidelines have a legal basis. I'm sure that in the future, in terms of primary and secondary education, well, the EDB has been doing quite well, but of course, we must continue to improve ourselves, and we will continue to work with other departments on this. Thank you.
Question 3, Mr.